pricing is typically the biggest leak that I will find. Usually people will try to price competitively to the market, whatever, with no consideration of their overhead. And so I usually, assuming people have great books, go in, figure out what their overhead is, and I show them the math like, hey, this is where you're leaking. Every time you have this dollar come in, 35 cents, 55 cents, sometimes 75 cents goes out to pay all this overhead. And you didn't even think about that.
Welcome to the Profit Answer Man podcast. We believe the purpose of business is to make lots of money. We'll show you how to scale and grow your profit and cash flow, all while working less. We're a big fan of the ELF model. Easy, lucrative, and fun. If you're the backbone of America, you deserve to be well rewarded for that. Listen in to see how other business owners are doing it and how to maximize your profit and cash flow. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Emily Bowie. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks.
I am too. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
I will say I am one of the partners at Thorn Advisors, and at Thorn, we focus on helping business owners turn profit into cash, reduce tax strategically, heavy on the strategic part, and build wealth for today and legacy for tomorrow. I think for us, one of the biggest things is like building a business that matters. And we are both, my business partner and I, mothers first and business owners second. And so we came into this world as like high performing public accountants. And now we are high performing moms that also own a cash flow and tax strategy firm. So we're always about balance and really making sure we're building wealth and legacy.
You know what I love about that is the fact that when you are clear like that and you have a boundary, then you figure out how to run your business efficiently instead of just wasting so much time in your business. And that's one of the core principles of profit first is Parkinson's law. You will use up the time and money that you allocate. If you control your time, then you just don't use a lot of it. And you use profit first in your business, right?
Yes.
How has that been helpful?
It is so helpful. And I think so many times a lot of people think it is just kind of tedious moving money around, doing all of these things. But to your point, if it's there, you'll spend it. So it's better to move it out. And we have seen that that's supported us as we have built two different things at the same time when we're talking about our firm and other pet projects we have going on. Having money set aside with a clear purpose has been super helpful. The other thing is it reduces so much risk. And I think that's the thing most people skip over is they think having it all together is less risky, but having it all together, like if PayPal puts a freeze on your account or heaven forbid you get sued, it can lock up all of your dollars if all of your dollars are in one account. And I think that was the reason I was like, that makes complete sense because I'm a simple gal and I always have been like, less is more. But I think in this arena, it is better to move things out and have a special place for everything so that you reduce the risk of potentially, I don't know, having all your funds locked up.
You should always have a backup bank and you should always have a backup collection system. So you mentioned PayPal and some other system. If you're using Stripe, whatever, you always need it in place, ready to go because these things happen. Banks shut your account down. The IRS levies you accidentally. Who knows?
Right.
All of these things can happen and it's helpful.
Well, and I come out of the auditing world, so I am very much aware of risk and how it comes into play when you're putting procedures in place or trying to figure out your process and your flow and where your cash needs to be. I'm always like, what could go wrong here? Because I think that's a question we don't always ask ourselves. And to your point, it's like having those backup collection opportunities as well as backup bank accounts are a necessity, not a luxury.
Think about half the questions I ask my clients are, what could go wrong with this? It's because Like, I don't necessarily trust what they're doing until I trust.
Right.
Show me you've got, and that's part of what they hire me for, is to make sure they have robust systems and that things are proper and that they get that second set of eyes to notice. And then we'll have a discussion. It's like, look, the chances of this are low. Is it worth the effort or is it not?
For sure.
And or it might just be having that alternate plan in place. Like a lot of times with our businesses, especially since COVID, we always want an oh crap plan in place.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is if we have to make cuts, if we have to shift something, in that moment, you're going to be emotional.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's written down that this is the order of cutting employees or this is the order of this, it becomes so easy to execute.
Yeah, it's that contingency plan. I talk about this, especially with my business owners that have partners. It's like everything's great until it's not great. So let's put a plan in place of when we determine it's not great anymore, and then the dissolution and what it looks like and how, because to your point, when it's great, you are not as emotional about how it's going to be separate. And it just makes it a lot easier to do a lot of these things on the front end. So I've seen it really work against people not having that contingency plan because they get into this 11th hour they didn't know existed and they're like, crap, what do I do now? And they shut down business and there goes the dream. And like, that sucks because you work so hard for your money. You want to make sure you are protecting yourself in all the ways.
And that's the key. It's protection. Business is a roller coaster. And so you have to be ready for the downturns as much as the upturns. Everyone likes the up. Everyone forgets about the down.
For sure.
What I find is managing cash in a business is really not that difficult. But people make it difficult.
Mm-hmm.
They put a lot more complexity into it. When you talk to business owners, where do you notice that they first start to lose control of the cash or visibility or even understanding about how cash moves through their business?
Oh, I feel like this is something I like preach on a regular basis because I try to encourage business owners because whether you are seasoned or not, a lot of them rely heavily on their profit and loss, and it is not the full picture. They think revenue coming in, expenses going out is all the money that goes out. But when they use a loan or a credit card to buy that expense, they're forgetting about the principal payment to the loan. That's not seen on your profit and loss. And those are things that can be so confusing to somebody who doesn't know financial statements. And if they're not clear on how the cash moves, it can be really difficult. So I always encourage people to understand how the cash flows in their business beyond just looking at it retroactively.
I think accountants even struggle to understand how cash moves through a business sometimes and how things are going because there isn't necessarily a standard. And what I mean by that is everyone creates their own chart of accounts and everyone's got their own way of doing things. And so they're not incorrect. They're just your way of doing it. And if someone doesn't truly understand that, it can make a big difference in understanding how cash is coming and going.
For sure. And I also think you just hit on something that I always tell people. The first thing you outsource, I don't care who you are, how small you think you are, you outsource your bookkeeping to somebody who knows how to do it. And the reason I recommend that is because it's a system. So think about any other workflow in your business. You want to make sure you're leveraging it the best way possible. And if you are, kind of DIYing your books, then you're going to need a cleanup, which is always more expensive than you realize. And then two, you actually can't make strategic decisions if you don't have numbers. And if you're making decisions off of numbers that don't exist, then they're not very strategic.
So I agree with your suggestion, but there's a struggle here. And the struggle is most business owners don't know what good bookkeeping is.
That's true.
And so they can't necessarily select a good bookkeeper or know that it's being done right. More often than not, they pick the cheapest solution and you end up with bad books. But if you don't understand that they're bad books, you don't know.
And I think that's where kind of investing in the strategy piece of a CFO or a tax strategist or somebody who is deeming themselves the experts of how things should be and being able to use that as like the filter too, because I know as a CFO, not all bookkeepers are equal in my mind, especially when I get books and I'm like, what is happening here? But I also know that I'm not a QuickBooks expert because I am not a bookkeeper. So I'm not maneuvering around chart of accounts on a regular basis, but I do know how I like them to look so that I can get useful information out of them.
I agree with you. The problem is finding the right expert. And here's what I mean.
True.
I get a lot of tax accountants
Mm-hmm.
whose sole job it is to fill out a tax return.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do bookkeeping, the only thing they care about is that the books are set up so they can do the tax return,
Yeah.
not so the business owner can make a strategic decision.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you've got an owner who doesn't understand what bookkeeping is with an accountant he thinks is going to help him save taxes, but isn't. And here we are stuck. And so again, it's finding that right person.
Well, and I think that also this is where working with someone like your company or our firm is so important because you have expert eyes in the two fields that need to have expert eyes and then looping in collaborative conversation. That's the biggest thing that I feel like is a deficit for most business owners is that their bookkeeper doesn't talk to their tax person, it doesn't talk to their financial advisor, doesn't talk to their CFO. And all three or four, depending on how we're counting, they all should be talking together so that that business owner who doesn't speak financial ease, as I say, like can not be the middleman in between everyone because that's where things get mistranslated. They don't understand what I meant when I said X versus Y, all of that jazz.
That happens to me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what generally happens is I will have a conversation with the owner. The owner will then go and have a conversation with their different people.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell them, send me the documents. Like
Mm-hmm.
send me the tax return, send me the legal contract, send me a copy of the response from the email and everything else. And what I usually find is A, they didn't read it. And
Heavy on
B,
that.
I'm like, you said you wanted X. This
Mhm.
document does not say that.
Mhm.
It says something totally different. And so, yes, getting everybody on the same page is extremely important, making sure they're all going the same direction.
And I will tell you, one of the things we've improved in our onboarding process is in our tax organizers, when we send those out for strategy, we're like, who needs to be on these calls? And we actually like ask them that question so that they're starting to think about like who are decision makers, who are your other experts in your business, whether or not they're contractors too. And we give, obviously some ideas of who those people would be. But I do think that's an area a lot of people miss. And then the other flip side of it is everyone thinks every tax preparer is going to help them with strategy. And that is just simply not the case. And it's the same thing with bookkeepers. They think bookkeepers are people that can help them with financial analysis and strategy. And that's not typically the case either.
No, that is very true. I know you all do tax strategy, and we chatted about this before we started. And I always make fun of this part, but come December, the CPA might get a phone call from the owner about tax strategy at the last minute,
Mm-hmm.
or something comes up and they realize that there's now a massive tax bill and they didn't set money aside in their tax account with profit first, or the CPA doesn't want to admit they didn't keep on top of it.
Yeah.
So they're like, go buy something.
Ugh.
And you go buy things that don't actually drive profit and cash flow.
No.
And they actually cause cash to go negative in April, May, June, July.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, you didn't pay the government. Congratulations.
Right.
But you're going to pay everybody else 3 or 4 times what your tax bill would have been. And nobody ever calculates that half of the deal.
I know. And I think first of all, I couldn't agree more that is like the most rookie advice in the entire world is like, go buy a vehicle or go and invest in this like huge thing that you don't actually need. That's not actually going to progress your business forward. because it's short-sighted. They're thinking about the tax bill today, but not the impact of the scale and the growth later. And that's why it's so important to have that tax strategy hand in hand with that CFO cash flow work, because it is a dance of like, what are your goals in the next year, 5 years, 10 years? And then we build out a plan and run scenarios accordingly. And we do them side by side. Because like, that's the thing too, is you can have a tax strategist go run something for you, but they're not factoring in that you're barely making payroll every single month or every 2 weeks, which is even worse than not making it every single month. You know what I mean? And those are the things that I think having that collaborative nature, no matter if it's in the same firm or not, and it's just a conversation that makes the biggest difference for that business owner, is making them a key player in the conversation, but not relying on them to know things that they just simply don't know and how it all impacts each other.
And that's very important. And again, that's why you have to have conversations on an ongoing basis. And that's one thing that most business owners don't have, is at minimum the quarterly conversation with the tax person. Because I look at their stuff and they're making these quarterly payments. I'm like, your business is not at all behaving like it did last year.
Mm-hmm.
All of these payments you're making are based on something that doesn't exist.
Right.
And so it's not making sense. You need to have follow-up conversations. You need to make changes, and you need to stay on top of it.
Well, and along that same line too is like tapping in the experts to know the rules, the laws, the implications of making this decision versus that decision. Because if you don't do that, you're how can you move confidently forward, truly? And I think it's one of those things that the education piece is huge for us. We really want to educate people on why this decision makes sense for them. And the truth is that you can't just blanket statement anything. So if you're getting advice from social media or chat GPT or whatever, you have to run it through that professional judgment filter, because every business owner is not only unique, but their goals are going to probably shift and change. And you're right, like the estimates they paid last year may not make sense for this year, or even Q1 versus Q3, because we know how quickly business can change.
And if you didn't tell ChatGPT the important things, then it's going to give you the wrong answer. And it's not necessarily going to ask you the right questions.
Right.
Or ask you them in a way that you understand what it's saying.
Yes.
Tax law is a pain in the rear, and you really have to understand the nuances of what and how different things go together, because certain things don't.
Well, and it changes. So even once you get a handle on it, then a new bill passes and everything's different. And so I'd much rather tap the person who is like responsible, and as a CPA, legally responsible for knowing the rules. Because you get to a certain point in your business and just DIY is just doesn't make sense anymore. Like, my time is valuable doing the thing I do that no one else can do. And certainly there are things in my business like marketing and stuff like that it is much better for me to pay somebody to go do. So I am not the person doing it, because I do better doing everything else.
And that's an important step in the growth of the business owner, learning when to let go, what to let go of, and trusting, but verifying that it is getting done and done the way that you expected it to be done.
And I like you just said this, because I think there's a place for all the AI out there and different tools and education. I think you should always know generally how and what is happening in your business, no matter if you're the one pulling the lever or not. So I think those tools are good for general education, but tapping in lawyers, like tax law will be crazy, and then CPAs and financial professionals, anyone that makes it their business to know how it all works is super helpful to go alongside that general education. But you should be curious. You should ask questions, and you shouldn't feel like you can't ask a question, which I hear a lot with people, is that their tax strategist or tax preparer kind of like make them feel bad about the questions they're asking, or that they made a decision that they should have run by them first. Those types of things. And I feel like that is, this podcast, whether or not you are, doing it within your business too, is like having these very like constructive conversations of like when to talk to your tax professional, when to ask the question to your CFO or whoever before you make decisions. And no question is a dumb question when we're here to partner with you,
I agree with you. I think the problem comes up in that they may not understand the answer and the person doesn't explain it. Now, I'll be honest, this has really come to light with me. I got a new trainer at the gym. I've been lifting for years. I lift heavy weights. It's not, but yet what he has brought into it is such nuances and little things. And we've actually had to learn how to communicate because the way he tells me to do things doesn't click. And so we actually have a conversation and he's like, for you, this has to be the cue because that makes sense for you and we'll get the result I need. And so we've learned how to talk to each other and find our way through it. And I'm like, you know what? This is what business owners are experiencing with money.
100%. Okay. So this has been what makes me different as a CFO versus other CFOs is that I am a coach. So my goal every time working with a business owner is to create connection, to understand unique things about them. So when I give you a strategy, is it realistic for you to go in fact and do? And I think you touched on it with, the trainer example is like, you have to have an emotional intelligence piece that can support you as the business owner with your financial professional. And you're in the industry, I'm in the industry, it's kind of hard to find financial people that aren't just straight consultants versus consultant coach side of things. So like there is this piece where it is important to think about the person on the other end and does this make sense to them? Because oftentimes it won't. And you have to have a professional that's dedicated to the education piece and the connection piece, I think, to be able to like partner with, because you won't feel like you're in a partnership if they're not bought into you and helping you get it.
It's the first call that we have when we onboard a client is a couple hours long and we don't talk about the numbers.
Same.
We talk about their childhood and their behaviors with money, because whatever that behavior is, it's going to leak into the business.
Sure.
We talk about their entire life because if they're in the midst of a divorce or if they're out of shape or unhealthy, whatever that part of their life that is not running correctly, it's going to be a bump in the business.
I couldn't agree more.
And so we spend a lot of time getting that holistic picture of them so that we know we have to watch out for these bumps. And we're not going to be experts at fit.
Right.
Well, I can give you the basics of health. You might need to go get a health coach, but at least we can talk through that to say, what are you doing? Because if you don't have the energy to run the business, that's an issue.
For sure.
If you've got other emotional things or other issues going on, or you're not doing well with your spouse, that's a risk because she's going to take half your business. So we need to think about that.
But you touch on something really important too, is like, I can only be as strategic as much as I know. So if I don't know you and I don't know or even can project what could potentially happen in the future, I can only help you so much. And so that is such a key thing. And we do the same. We start with goals and like, where are you at? What does freedom look like? Are you trying to exit? Are you like, what are we doing here? But also like, how much time are you trying to spend at home versus working in your business? Because my solution for one is going to be different than the other, And I think that's what makes good strategists is understanding that it all works together. Because when I came into the field, I started with the personal finance piece because that is what will change the trajectory of your life. I noticed in the business realm, nobody talked about it. And I'm like, how do you not do this? Like, you have to help them get established in some sort of way personally so that they're not sucking everything out of their business, or they're pricing in such a way that they can actually make a profit. Because pricing is usually the one way every business owner is leaking money every time they collect a dollar, So it's one of those things where it all impacts each other.
That is correct. We also look at the personal finance side of it as well, because there's two parts to a business. And I think everyone is focused on part A.
Yep.
How do we drive revenue?
Mm-hmm.
Very few people are focused on part B. How do we keep cash and remove it from the business and put it in my pocket and let it grow?
Mm-hmm.
Even if the business fails, I and my family are perfectly safe. We will survive, and I will come back with round 2, 3, 4, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
How do I do that? And I find most business coaches don't understand money.
Agreed.
Very few people understand the personal finance side of it.
Agreed.
And weaving it all together with tax, with marketing,
it's hard becoming a business owner. And I think we kind of people gloss over it. But the truth is, you suddenly put on this hat and said, I'm really good at designing brands. And then all of a sudden you're also an accountant, you're a marketer, you're all these things that you never were before. And you have to be. And there becomes this piece and this tipping point that you got to really understand who is behind the business so that you can support them the best way strategically. Because if your personal finance is falling apart, you don't have the capacity to worry about the nuanced thing in your business. And so we got to, start here to move there. But that would be different for the next business owner too. And I couldn't agree more, because especially personal finance to me is the heart of everything, because it changes your whole life once you get a handle on it. It can literally change the entire trajectory of your life if you do it responsibly and you learn things that they just don't teach you typically. And to me, I could be on a soapbox all day talking about it, but it really does matter.
It does. And we don't talk personal finance so much on this podcast. My other podcast, Richer Soul, that's where we start with is understanding money. How do you build wealth? And then everything else that goes on top of that, because there's a whole bunch of other parts of that. What do you find are the biggest issues when you meet business owners with regards to cash flow?
So I kind of touched on this. Pricing is typically the biggest leak that I will find. Usually people will try to price competitively to the market, whatever, with no consideration of their overhead. And so I usually, assuming people have great books, go in, figure out what their overhead is, and I show them the math, hey, this is where you're leaking. Every time you have this dollar come in, 35 cents, 55 cents, sometimes 75 cents goes out to pay all this overhead. And you didn't even think about that. You just accounted for how much it costs you to go do the thing. And sometimes they don't even account for that. So it is one of those things that I think pretty much foundationally, no matter what business owner, what line of business I'm working in, I will show them their price analysis and be like, look, this is either working or it's not, or there's opportunity to optimize this when you go in the proposal process or whatever the case may be. I had one business owner who had pretty solid profit. If you just looked at the profit, even the cash in his bank account. But when we did the pricing analysis, there was about 1.4 million for the year of unaccounted for cost that could have been in the proposal process, where he could have doubled and almost tripled his profit had he known about it. And so going into this year, he's taking that and he's like, okay, running with this, making sure I'm accounting for this overhead. And it doesn't have to be dollar for dollar, but it is important to know that that's where your money goes,
And for us, pricing is one of the 16 levers that we look at. It is one of the most powerful. Last week's episode, we talked about how a 10% price increase can turn into a 100% profit increase just by playing with that lever. And so it's an important part of it.
I think the next thing is like never doing an expense audit. I think you should be doing expense audits quarterly because we all know we're all guilty. We signed up for that thing for the 7-day free trial and we've been paying for it for 3 years and we had no idea that we were still paying for it. Or we wanted to start with this one tool because it was cheaper and then we got more specialized. So we got another tool and then we forgot that we don't use that tool anymore. So like those expense audits are great ways to just be so intentional of getting that overhead down. Typically it's overhead. And I think it's underutilized. I think people think they kind of poo-poo it. But even when you do an expense audit, you can be like, hey, this subscription, I'm paying $100, $200 more by paying it monthly versus quarterly, whatever. Or I need to pay it monthly because my cash is tight. So I can't afford to do the annual subscription. So though it just brings up so many questions that I think business owners don't ever really think about unless prompted.
No, and that's correct. And a lot of times it might even be we're paying for 28 email accounts, but those 8 people aren't here anymore. And so just doing that. And there are companies that will actually do all this work for you. So you don't even have to do it. They'll do it on a what we can find basis. They charge you. And hey, if you don't have the time, pay somebody to come in and do it for you, especially when they don't charge you unless they find a discount. Or negotiating fees on all those contracts.
Sure.
A lot of them are negotiable. I don't think people they're too busy. That's the problem.
I mean, I think about it from a personal finance. I call every 10 months about my internet. Like, what can you give me? Because the internet is that tricky thing where they give you a slower speed, charge you more money, all of those things. But even doing that call, I can justify why I don't have time for it because I'm like, oh, it's only like $5, $10. But that monthly over the next 3 years makes a huge difference.
That's one of the things that people are always like, I want to pay my kid so I can save on taxes. And that's good. You know what? Give the 14, 15-year-old, go call the companies and figure out how to get us discounts. Because a couple of things they learn. Number one, they learn how to have a conversation. Number two, they learn how to negotiate.
Sure.
They get some agency and some success. And now you have a legitimate reason to pay them all that money so you can save on taxes, which is cool. And of course, this is the thing parents don't realize. Just because you pay them doesn't mean you need to give them the paycheck. You can take the paycheck, put it in a separate account and go, this is how I'm paying for your sports. Get to work, kiddo.
Yeah. Well, and I think to that point, there's so many opportunities of bringing money back into the household in ways like that. But even so, retirement, doing the custodial IRAs, having opportunities where you are setting it up in just like an index fund for them, like those types of things, those are great opportunities that I think are missed because it's hard and it's confusing and you don't know how to do it. So you don't ask the question. And that's why, to your point, you got to ask that expert and get that expert in to be like, hey, where am I missing the boat on this? Because I don't expect the standard business owner to know those things. And to your point, I love the idea of delegating an expense audit to your 14, 15-year-old because you're right. It just checks all the boxes. It teaches them so many skills and you don't have to do it. And they know enough about you to be able to get through all the security questions.
And that's the key. And these are the ways you have to think about how do I achieve my results while working less? I think too many people are grinded out, 10x it. No, I really want an easy, lucrative, and fun business. That's why you went into business. How do I work less, make more, and enjoy what I do? And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think that's like the biggest thing for us too, is like the wealth and the legacy piece. Like legacy is built with the business alongside raising and being present with your children, alongside having family gatherings and giving yourself that extra time to like build the photo album or whatever it is that we never find the time to do because there's plenty of other things to do. But those are the things that make life full. The things of being out outside with everybody and like connecting and not on your phone, not worrying about X, Y, or Z. I think that is the qualitative part that people forget about. They only look at the dollars, whether it's in and out, and they often need to think about quality of life too.
And that's a big part of it is the quality of life. And that's why we start with understanding their goals, because they're like, oh, I got a 4-year-old. I want to start a new division. Okay. How are we going to do this? Like, let's
Right.
be realistic here. How are you going to do this and achieve what's really important and find that harmony in that? And that's the key.
For sure.
If people would like to learn more about your services and find you, how do they do that?
Sure. They can find us at thornadvisors.com. We're also Thorn Advisors on Instagram. And then my business partner and I are starting a podcast, and it's called Prosper and Get Paid Playbook. So it's all about the wealth legacy side of understanding your business, but also knowing the personal side of what is required and why we're doing this thing in the first place.
That is awesome. We'll put that all in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this unedited video of the Profit Answer Man podcast. If you'd like to catch the full episode and learn more about what we do, check us out at profitcomesfirst.com. We also go through the Profit First book in each and every chapter in the beginning episodes of the podcast, so check those out as well. Thanks for listening, and here's to you having a more profitable and growing business.